This is the Business of Indie Games, and I'm with Hamudi Matough, who is the CEO of Game Plus, an international video games agency that is based out of Beijing in China and is set up to help developers enter the Chinese market. Hamudi is in a unique position. Amongst other languages, he speaks Chinese and English. He's based in Beijing, and he knows both Eastern and Western gaming. It's a unique perspective, and I'm really excited to have you here, Hamudi.
Happy to be here.
Can you tell me, how did you get to be in, give me some background and tell us how you got into this unique position in the first place?
Since I was a kid, I was always interested in the Oriental culture, Korea, Japan, China. And just right after high school, I applied for scholarships, got one in China. Came here, studied, finished studying, got an opportunity to start working in the gaming industry. Happy elements, nonetheless, and that just kept rolling. And I'm a game enthusiast. I love games. I'm a bedroom game developer as well, a hobbyist, more of. And and now we're here.
That's great. And so you're you know quite a bit about the Chinese market. I mean, you mentioned to me that 96% of games currently in China are played on mobile.
Yes, indeed.
Can you give us an overview of the Chinese market, and also let us know what opportunities there still are on mobile in China?
Well, yeah, now for the last few years, mobile has just been growing rapidly. It's gone crazy, and everybody wanted to get on the mobile gaming trend. And from last year, from 2017, I've included in the slides, for those who have the slides, you can see that from the near 10,000 games that has been published, 96% of them were mobile games. And mobile games also accounted for 57% of the total generated revenue of games in China. Just been going steadily up year after year. Last year, it surpassed $18 billion in revenue, mobile games alone. And in total, it was $31 billion plus the gaming revenue.
What niche markets are there available still on mobile? Where are people winning on mobile at the moment? Or what do you see up and coming?
Right now, it's either those who are riding the trend. For example, like Tencent, they bought PUBG and they made it on mobile. NetEase, they made their own version of Battle Royale. It's called Knives Out. They're doing great. So those who are like the first ones who catch a trend and bring it to mobile, those make good bucks. Also, you have the casual games are still big on mobile. The games that you can play on commute just to fill time, because that's what people do here. When they're when they have a free time, they're on mobile. They're either watching a video or playing a game.
Yeah. So like puzzle games and endless runners also.
Yeah, you have puzzle games, endless runners. Match 3 games, tower defense. So casual social games.
Yes. So is the PC market actually growing in China?
It's been on the decline, and even publishers are now fewer and further in between than they used to. Now just the established companies, the very well-established companies and very well-established games, they have a chance of making it. So for a developer that that's developing a PC game, I would advise that maybe try to get it known in the region first, like in the Asian region, and then the word will travel, and then you will have a big enough developer that will have interest in it. So that it's been on the decline, and the console, don't even mention that, it's less than 1% right now in China.
Yeah, sure. I mean, console is it's not yet officially regulated by the government, is it? It's not even.
That's true. That is true.
Allowed yet. Although I do believe people are, of course, playing console there. So, what are serious gamers doing then? What are the hardcore doing? How do Chinese hardcore players get their satisfaction from deeper than just on mobile?
Yeah, well, mobile, from just the mobile section last year, 70% were hardcore games that generated revenue. So that they are a smaller audience, the hardcore players, but they generate the most amount of revenue per player. So you have last year we had the ARPG, action RPG games, MOBAs, battle arenas, and turn-based RPGs. Those three, they generated over 70% of the mobile gaming revenue.
Right. So effectively, the market are just really playing it on smaller screens.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. And now they have a lot of peripherals that you can play, that you can attach your phone to a gamepad if you want to have a more of a gamer.
Okay.
Yeah, you can cast it on your TV or
you can cast it. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, that's really interesting. That seems like a real area of possible expansion for young developers for making hardcore mobile games that are then casted onto a larger television.
Yes, that is true. That now it's because most of the screens here in China, they are smart. Whether is the TV is smart by itself, it have an Android system. Most of them run on Android system, by the way. Or if they have a normal TV, they're most likely attached it to a smart, over-the-top box, an Android box.
Right. Yeah.
That's how everybody consumes their entertainment right now.
Yeah.
Satellite dishes and cable is not as popular as it used to be.
Right. Yeah, I see. So they're kind of skipping out a whole step that we took in the West.
Exactly. So in a way, they're kind of, skipping the console phase. I mean, consoles are still powerful, but they are for that niche market of hardcore gamers who want to play the latest and greatest on console, like console exclusive games. But for players who want to play on the big screen, they have very good alternative, Android devices that are very capable these days.
Sure. So I understand, that consoles are not officially, available in China, but are other games regulated by the government? You need as I understand it, you need certain permissions, and you have to pay to get your titles governmentally approved before they go on anything.
That is correct. That especially for mobile games, because they're the easiest to create or to generate. So you need to get a license. Actually, a few of them. You need to get a number, like an import number, if you're a foreign developer, and you need to get the cultural background from the government. So you have to provide any text in the game or any spoken, even like if you have a song that has lyrics, you have to provide the text for that. So they have to go through it, and you have to provide the file of the game design. So the government have to see that. A person will look at that and will say yay or nay. And but the good thing is now that they don't just say nay, they say nay, but even why.
So they're starting to understand the market themselves.
Yes, because it's an opportunity for them as well. It's creating businesses in China. It's like hiring people.
Yeah, what an industry, really.
That process costs around $10,000. $8,000 to $10,000, and it takes from 90 to 60 days. 90 to 180 days. 90 to 180 days, depending on how much content does the game have.
Yeah. Okay. So you really have to know that you're going to make your money back before you start. That's not the only cost.
There are like other costs included, but I guess we'll get to that in a bit.
Just one more question on the governmental side there. Do they actually look at it from a sort of like a cultural reference? We talked about in Germany for many years, no blood was allowed and all of the blood had to be green. And I've heard you say that it's not all dragons and pandas in China. Does the government have any input into that? And, what does the Chinese market like?
Well, and for the government, they don't really care how well localized your game is, or even if you localize it at all. If you pay the fee, if you provide the information, they will look at it objectively and say yay or nay. But for them, what they say no for is, politically sensitive content, especially if it's, China related. That's an even bigger no-no. Maybe, religious conflict. These also go on the no-no. Gory content. I mean, like bloody is okay. They don't ask you to turn blood green, but way too bloody, skull crushing.
Similar to the West, although of course in the West it's got more lax than ever, I think. So imagine I'm a developer and I've just arrived in China. What are the three biggest, most common mistakes I'm likely to make, or pitfalls that I might fall into?
Well, what I'd hope you'd avoid is, first and foremost, is underestimating the workload. That I see almost every developer that comes here, if it's his first game, they fall into that. And because there's just too much to do to localize the game. We're not just talking about translating your game or editing the images. It's mainly for integrating the local payments. On the iOS side of things, it's pretty straightforward because the App Store, it is the App Store from Apple. It works just as it works in Europe or the States. But for the Android side, since Google is still behind the Great Firewall of China, all of its services don't work here, including the Google Play, which gave birth to a multitude of local app stores, 300 plus by last year. And and each one of them, they have their own requirements. A lot of them, cross and match. So you wouldn't have to create like 300 different packages, but you have to integrate a lot of different SDKs. And you have four types of SDKs. You have the payment one, which they could be like from the operators or from the e-wallets or from the bank payment solution. Then you have your socials for sharing images and links and achievements. You have the login SDK, which is normally per app store. Not every app store asks you to implement it, but the biggest ones like Tencent, like 360, Xiaomi, these they ask you to put their own login, SDK. And then you have other ones like analytics or app store specific ad networks. And the problem is almost all of those SDKs are Java based. And these days we know that a lot of the developers, they use third-party engines like Unity or Unreal Engine or the likes. And these are C#, C++, based engines, and implementing Java code SDK in those, it has proven that it's very problematic for developers that are not very familiar with Java. I don't think a lot of developers study it these days, but so you have to brush up on your Java or get someone who's really good at it, because you have to create wrappers for the SDKs and whatnot. So that would be the first mistake.
What percentage of the games with those SDKs are Android as opposed to the Apple penetration?
Yeah, well, the Android market in general is in China is 3 times bigger than the iOS. So it's, I think, 75 or 76 to 24.
Thank you.
And but games wise, they're pretty similar because especially if you use a game engine, you can port the game to both sides. And maybe they're slightly more on the App Store, because even from the outside, you can launch your game. You can tick the box that says mainland China, and your game is available in China. But starting this year, at least rumor has it, the Chinese government will enforce getting that regulation paper even for apps on the App Store, and they will pressure Apple to pull down any apps that didn't provide that.
So how much in that case with that workload, how much time should a developer on average put aside for mastering the code to get those wrappers and those insertions into the stores?
To put it comfortably, it will be 6 months. So 6 months, you need like 1 or 2 people that are working just to do this, and you have a feedback loop with the publisher or with the app stores, with the channels themselves. And so they have to check if you implemented their SDK or the third-party SDK that they want properly, and if it works properly. And so I would give it 6 months. Like, I haven't seen a game that has been done and ready in less than that.
That's quite a time period. It shouldn't be underestimated, as you said. In your slide presentation, you've put in quite a bit of which, of course, everybody can download with this file. Can you just elaborate some of the detail in that, the localization process? It's obviously very important to get that right, particularly when East meets West, cultural differences, etc.
I think the most important part is translation. Translation is key when it comes to China. I guess like in Europe, you have countries that you put the game in English and it plays well there and it's fine. Here, translation is really important, and you have to make sure that it's very well polished. And if you have, let's say, like jokes or puns that they might be internationally recognized. In China, they'll probably sound like, if translated directly from the source language, they might sound like those poorly dubbed animes that none of us like. And so like you have to get a good translation partner, like for outsourcing, or if you have people that have to really proofread it. And that said, the game still have to keep its own identity. So if you have a character that's naughty or a character that's hard-headed, so you have to also show that in the translation. So it cannot just read like a newspaper. I mean, it's a game after all. So you have to introduce some slang-ish characters in it. A bit of research is needed. And of course, you have to find a nice font for the game. You can't just put the equivalent of an Arial Chinese font. Also, don't forget about the image-based texts. You have to work with these too. And I guess that's it for the translation. So there are good games, big games like Clash Royale. They only translated the game properly. And one more point, you have to make sure that it displays in the UI well, because you have the Chinese and English, or Chinese and other languages, the length of the word or of the sentence, they're different. So you have to make sure that it displays properly in the button on the menu. And Clash Royale did a good job at that. And the game didn't change from the global version to the Chinese version. It just translates properly. All of that said, there are things that the Chinese gamer would expect in the games. And I mean, you can add extra Chinese elements only if it fits the general theme of the game.
Yeah.
So you have, for example, you have Subway Surfer. They added a few characters, like the monkey from the Journey to the West and his flying cloud, because that game has a multitude of characters, and that can pass for them.
That's a well-known intellectual property even in the West, right?
And you have Plants vs. Zombies. They added like aesthetics and world design. So the second one, Plants vs. Zombies.
So is that like they added kind of like Chinese plants and Chinese gardens to sort of make it fit?
Not really. No, the characters themselves or the objects that you play with, like the core gameplay didn't change. You just have Crazy Dave, and that in the local version he's wearing a Chinese sort of jacket, but he's still Crazy Dave and acts crazy, looking for tacos. And they also added a Kung Fu world, because in the second one you travel in time in ancient Egypt and different places.
Yeah. Were you involved in the translation of Plants v Zombies at all?
No, but I know people from Capcom back then when they were implementing to the Chinese market, and I saw a lot of the process. Yeah, I also once I was in a conference, and the guys from Fingersoft. I don't know if you know the game. It's called Hill Climb Ride. So it's a casual game, side scroller, a hillbilly dude on a tractor, and he just drives on, on hills. And people liked it. They worked with the local publishers. It went really good. And so he was telling us that in a talk, and then they did a local sequel, like a Chinese sequel, where they put, the ride was on the Great Wall, and on the background you can see, Chinese buildings and whatnot. And so they kind of over localized the game, but he
Yeah.
said it didn't do remotely as good.
Right. Yeah.
But then when they launched the global sequel, when they launched it in China, it did even better than the first one. And that one was still a Western game, with driving a tractor or different on the hill. So yeah, so the game's, genuine, and for the local player to be interested in it.
Yeah, really. It shows that it's a fine balance, and you need to do your research properly to understand the market. Same as anywhere, right? Really.
Yeah, that is true. And so for localization, I would say, besides those points, you have things that players expect in the game in China, such as pay to win is still okay
Yeah.
in China.
Yeah.
Not to confuse it with you have to pay to win, but you can pay to skip a reasonable amount of grinding, let's say, and that even publishers encourage that. You have fight scene acceleration, so you can skip fight scenes, or just to save yourself some time.
Right.
At the end of the day, it all has to do with skipping grinding, or
Yeah,
accelerating.
of course. Yeah. I mean, it is in a way, isn't it? Like you pay for the game, you pay for the game, and then you pay not to play it.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it really boring, but you can pay to get out of it.
It's the option. It's the illusion of the option. You can choose to move there or watch the scene, but you can also skip it.
Yeah. I mean, people are making money. Obviously there's a moral debate, raging through the business, with loot boxes and stuff, where it gets close, akin to gambling.
The Chinese government now, they do require you to show the percentage of what would you get in the box if you have a loot box. There is a requirement to disclose the percentage of what will you get.
Well, that is interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that sounds like a reasonable solution. Okay, so we've managed to integrate our SDKs, and we understand now Android, and we understand the complex system of stores in the market. So this kind of brings me to the next mistake that people make, and you suggested that with this complicated store system, it's quite easy to confuse the distributor and the publisher.
Yes, there is quite the common mistake, and the reason for that is the internet giants in China. You have Tencent, you have 360, Huawei, Baidu, Xiaomi. These are they are internet companies. They're registered internet companies. That's how they call themselves. And under them, they have from the many divisions they have both store divisions and publishing divisions. And what adds to the confusion that most of these divisions, like from the same corporate, they share the same email domain. So sometimes a developer, like from outside of China, they will be contacted by let's say Tencent, and they'll say, hey, we would like to get your game exclusively. Would you work with us? And they will be happy because, hey, who wouldn't want an exclusive deal with Tencent? And so yeah, they're happy. They sign. They launch. They get some amount of traffic, but then they realize that no, the game was only launched on Tencent's store and never launched anywhere else. And the deal was with the store directly. It was not with the publishing department. And yeah, so that's you see that happening more often than it should. And it's like the easy solution is pay close attention to the contract, to the agreement. I know those giant corps, they have, encyclopedias for contracts, but
Yeah.
you have to do it. You have to make sure, especially if it's an exclusive deal, you have to know what is the exclusive deal.
Yeah, thank you. I was speaking to someone the other day, was saying that developers will often, just check that the royalties are right, but not take a look at some of the smaller clauses which can get you into trouble,
Sure.
So, it's interesting that, what you're doing at Game Plus, you must have a lot of insight into those negotiations and those contracts, and be aware of, be able to help developers in what they're looking for.
Yes, that's normally what you do from day-to-day basis. And to shed some light on the common deals that you get with publishers locally. So first and foremost, you have to keep in mind that all those stores, the app stores and the payment channels that we mentioned earlier, they all take their cut of the pie. So for example, in Europe, if you launch the game on Google Play or on the App Store for that matter, they both take 30% for distribution and for payment. But in China, because it's not necessarily the payment channel doesn't belong to the distribution channel. So if the user gets the game from Tencent Store, for example, and they pay using China Mobile or China Unicom, the operator, then both the Tencent Store and the operator will take 30% of gross. And but if they get the game from the operator's distribution channel and use their own payment channel, then the operator will only take 30% of gross. And these percentages, I guess they're the highest with operators from payments and distribution channels. WeChat and Alipay take a little bit less, depending on the size of the game and the agreement you have. But normally it's between 10 and 20. If you use the bank card solution, it's even less. I think it's 5% of gross. So anyway, like there's a lot of variable on what the publisher will receive from all of those stores. So that's why they normally make the deal or the revenue share after the cut of the stores. You will rarely find the publisher who will agree to give you a cut of the pie from the actual gross. And after, it's normally between 50 to 60% in the favor of the publisher.
Right. Wow. When you say 50 or 60%, is that before those charges then? Before the operator?
No, after.
After,
it's
yeah.
from the net. Yeah.
From the net, yeah. Okay, thank you. So yeah, and speaking about, before we get into the sort of more detailed conversations about publishers, you talked with me before about the other mistake, the sort of believing in the unrealistic big money conversations. That everybody knows China's on the up, so plenty of money, right?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest mistakes as well. It's in the top 3, I guess, that developers, they're blinded by all of the money talk that's coming out of China. I mean, you hear a lot of big deals, for sure. You hear the one with the Supercell, with Talking Tom, and it's just way too many zeros. And you know what? They have money. I'm gonna get me some of it. But you have to realize that yes, they do have money, but they spend it wisely. All of those big deals that got you dreaming, they're made for strategic reasons, more than financial reasons at the time, like for a long-term financial reason, maybe. So you have to keep your expectations realistic. Plus, you have to also keep in mind that normally the publisher, they will pay that governmental the publication number fee. So you have to keep that in mind as well. So yeah, so if you have two, two good publishers that are interested in the game at the moment, just be realistic about it. Go with the better option of those two, because if you drag it longer, the interest will fade, and you might lose the chance to get published for that game for good.
Yeah, thank you. And so, I mean, that brings me really to, so what is currently the publishing landscape like? What are they looking for? We talked a little bit about the battle royale stuff, but pretty soon there'll be nothing but battle royale. So what else is there? What's possible?
As you said, like battle royale, that's everybody wants to have one. And since everybody is still looking, they probably have them yet already, but they didn't launch yet. There are only two or three that launched. So I guess this year, 2018, they will still be crazy about battle royale. But
Yeah,
if you want something more sure, you have ARPG, MMORPGs, turn-based RPGs. They're very big on RPG here. The point is, and so these are the ones that generate more money. They have a more niche audience, but they generate more money. Other than that, that you might find a publisher easier are casual to mid-core games, social ones that they're easy to play with short play sessions, but they have long shelf life. But for these, because
makes
I
sense.
guess, in my opinion, they're easier to create, so there are more of them. The competition is way fierce. So you
Yeah,
have to have, superb visuals in the game, great game mechanics and economics, just to have a leg in the race.
yeah, okay. And what about like first person and a third person action adventure? What's that market like?
First person, well, now for battle royale, third person is getting a leg up. First person, not so much. It's still a niche market. Don't get me wrong; it generates money. That niche market is millions of people. In China, you can find a publisher that's. The other day, I was speaking to a publisher that they only do, or they only publish games targeted for girls between the age 8 and 16.
Right.
And yeah, that's
Yeah.
a very niche market, but they're very
Yeah.
big at it. And mainly because publishers, when they have their first hit game and they get many million downloads and users, they try to keep them interested in their other games.
Yeah, of course. Because then they're marketing to their own audience,
Yes,
and they've already paid the cost of acquisition.
indeed.
How much game does the developer need to show a publisher, to a publisher before they get interested, before there's a bite?
These days, you need to have a solid demo that has, all the functionalities, all the game mechanics. It doesn't have to have all the stages of the game if it's stage based. So if to have like few stages just so they can get a clear image of what to play. But it's not like the old days when you can just bring a presentation and a SketchUp, and yeah,
Yeah,
that might raise some interest, but not really. It won't get you anywhere. So you need a solid demo, to a playable demo
sure.
to
And are you likely to get a better deal when you've got a solid demo because you've already reduced the risk?
well, you're more likely, I'll tell you this, you're more likely to get a deal if you have a finished product that is not launched yet, and if it's launched outside of China, that it's not launched on the iTunes, on the App Store, which is, I would say, that's like the fourth mistake that the developers do, if I can wiggle that in, that
Right.
when they publish their games abroad, like globally, so when they go to the App Store, they tick all the boxes.
Yeah.
I would advise, if you don't need to do that for China, for any contractual reasons, don't do it, because it's a real turnoff for publishers, and they don't want to republish a game on the iOS, or they wouldn't take it just for Android and miss on all the traffic and money that will come in consequence to the App Store.
That's really insightful, actually, and good to know. So basically, you're saying make it on Android, make it to a finished quality, don't launch it, and keep the Apple option open, and then likely to get a better deal then.
Yeah.
Because
From what I saw, that is the sweet spot.
I mean, what about like things like VR and mixed reality? Is it? I mean, in the West, everybody's starting to sort of think, "Oh no, it's not happened again." Is that the same in China?
So far, it is the same. We still have companies that are trying to push it, but now it's shifted more to entertainment rather than to games, and because they view easier, like 360 content and the like. I guess maybe this year, because Xiaomi, in cooperation with what's it called, Oculus Rift, Xiaomi and Oculus Rift. Yeah, the Oculus is launching Oculus Go, and Xiaomi, they're doing it's the same headset but for China, and yeah, I guess that might give it a boost. Especially that Xiaomi, they also work with Unity, and you can inside Unity, you can just click a button, and the Xiaomi SDK will be integrated.
Wow. What sort of common deals can be done in China with the publishers, would you say?
Besides the royalty share, I would say, of who does what, the who does what side of things. Normally, the developer, they will be in charge of localizing the game, integrating the SDKs, and packaging the game. Because, again, back to all the stores, even when you put even when you integrate the SDKs, each store or a lot of the stores, they would need a specific suffix to the package name. So when a player downloads the game from their store, it wouldn't automatically update from another store. So for that you have to make sure that your version control tools are in shape. And from the publisher side, they take care of user acquisition and its cost. They take care of the publication number and its cost, operation and support for the game, customer support or tech support, or if there's a problem with payments, and also guidance for the developer, because we talked about that localization is important, but a lot of it depends on the publisher, because the publisher, they have eyes on the ground, they know what works best than anybody, and they will tell you, like, for your specific game, that you have to do this way, you have to do that way, and you have to follow these the guidelines that they give you. And then you have the negotiable parts, like server hosting, who will pay for that, who will integrate that, who will take care of the admin tools, who will manage that, marketing materials, who will generate that, extra content of the game, also who will generate that, translation fees. Yeah, those are negotiables, and sometimes they work on them together, or they decide them from early on the deal.
What about marketing? I mean, these days it's all about reaching as many people in your target niche as possible on the internet. Who are the best publishers in terms of marketing support for independent game developers?
Specific publishers for indie game developers, that's kind of too broad. So it will depend on your type of game. So you have publishers that they look and they work well with specific type of games, is like, be it an indie game or a well-established one. So for example, you have My Games. They specialize in casual games publishing. So if you have a casual game, you can hit them up. You have Kuai Show. They're also looking a lot for casual games. You have iDream Sky, NetEase. These are more for hardcore games. And so yeah, so like, but when you look for publishers, like, there's a multitude of publishers here in China. But when you look at the publisher, try to look at their portfolio. What did they publish before, and see if there's synergy between those games and your game, because
Yeah.
most of the marketing comes from existing users or deals that they have with the stores themselves.
Yeah, or they're willing to spend the money on it as well, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose budgets for games, it's a similar thing. You've got to be realistic, and not to expect that you're going to do a Supercell deal, straight away for your game. But are the publishers? Is there a sufficient range? Like some, let's say, mid-core, AA want to be AAA. Can cost $500,000 to $1 million, rather than a sort of 50,000 for 100,000 for a casual mobile game.
Mm-hmm.
What is that range? Is there an appetite for the larger games?
Definitely, there definitely is. I mean, here now they really care about quality. It's not 2012 or 2013 anymore, where mobile games were new. So they've kind of seen it all, they played it all. So yeah, they really care about quality. And if you have a good game, if you have a really good game, AA, want to be AAA, and yeah, all the doors will open for you. So, and I see, you can really see that, like from where I'm sitting, when there's a good game coming, you can see that everybody is like, yes, I would like to test that. They might not work with it because they would see that it doesn't work with their own portfolio or for their own reasons. But yeah, everybody would like to test and at least give it a shot.
I mean, that's very, very encouraging, for the sort of smaller studio, who do have something, that where they've still got a few people to run, and they've still got, they're interested in quality, that's very insightful. I appreciate your time with that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the services that you provide, that Game Plus provides?
Well, Game Plus, we mainly help developer break into foreign markets, break into markets that they're new to them. And our stronghold is China, but we're also available in Asia in general. And so yeah, we will give you advice on your game. We will even help you demo your game to our publishing partners, and to save time and cost. We will target the ones that are most likely to work with the type of game that you have. We will consult and we will advise on the deal and the contract if you're going to sign one, and we'll also help afterwards. So if the deal is done, yeah, we will facilitate the communication. For example, in China, there are a lot of second-tier publishers that they might not speak or have English-speaking people, or good enough at least, but they're still multi-million-dollar companies, and you can still benefit from them. And so we help in that. You might even not know about them from outside of China, but yeah, we'll find them, and yeah, we'll facilitate the conversation. And so yeah, so you can think of it as we help developers find opportunities that are not in their face.
Well, that's really interesting, and hopefully you'll get some inquiries from our audience here,
I hope so. Anytime.
Because certainly you've opened my eyes, and the games I make, I'm thinking, wow, I haven't even thought about China. I'm always, got my head thinking about the Western market, who they are, how they're playing, what they spend. And so, yeah, it'd be a good opportunity to think about that. So with you say post support for the developers, what What's it like? I mean, it's difficult enough in the West getting back sometimes the royalties that you expect, that you feel you've earned, you know. Somehow the calculations never quite work that you know you get what you're expecting back. How is that in China?
Well, in China, you hear of those bad deals that you know, they go south and maybe the publisher doesn't pay the developer anymore, and that could happen sometimes. But that's how we help with that, because we do have a presence in China, legally speaking, and through our network of partners, we do have a big name locally, so we can pressure. Even without resorting to, you know, legal battles or anything, we can just, you know, pressure the publisher to do the right thing.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And finally, can you give us like some advice for developers? You know, if you've got 3 rules or 3 lessons or 3 pieces of advice for developers who are trying to get ahead to grow their studio, or you know, maybe build a new game for the East, what would you say to them?
I would say do your research, do your homework. I mean, there's a lot of free resources out there. You can go to, for example, like in China, if you have a game and you want to make it more China friendly, you can just go to App Annie, for example, see the genre of your game, what are the top 10 or top 20 in that genre games in China, and then you can download. I mean, they're easily accessible. The Chinese app stores, you can just download a few of those games, play them through just to have an idea. Keep at it. Keep sending your game to publishers in China and in Asia. I mean, that's how you will make it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was just occurred to me another question, if you don't mind. Um,
Sure.
what's the opportunity for self-publishing in China? Is it impossible just to due to the amount of stores and the amount of individual deals you'd have to do?
I wouldn't say impossible, but I would say keep it as a last case scenario. If you really didn't find anyone that will take your game,
Hmm.
yeah, then that should be the scenario when you self-publish.
Hmm.
I mean,
And what
it's
about?
easier when it comes to PC games. So if you have a PC game, you can just, you know, translate the game to Chinese, and that alone, like from a lot of developers that I know, they said just by translating the game that's already on Steam, the the revenue for that game went up 30%.
Wow,
So
well, that's really interesting.
that alone is a good start. And then you can, we're still talking about PC games. You can try Wii Game, which is 10 cents equivalent of, you know, Steam.
Yeah.
360, they also have a PC game portal. Yeah, you can try these, and they're more than happy to push some traffic to your game just to get it rolling.
Yes. Yeah. Of course. I mean, you know, they'll share in the revenue. What about crowdfunding? Is there like a Chinese equivalent of Kickstarter?
So far, not really. I mean, there are a few, but not enough that will get you anywhere.
We should
Sorry,
start.
we should, right? It's a good it's a good thing to do. But I mean, like Kickstarter does work in China and Indiegogo. So if you have your information in Chinese also on Kickstarter, you might be able to get some funding from China.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But that's very interesting as well. You know, thank you so much for sharing with us. You have really like opened my eyes to some of the possibilities in China. You know, particularly in the last few minutes, you know, I really got a sense of the green fields are still very much there. And I think our audience is going to get a lot out of what you said today. And so thank you so much for your talk today. I really appreciated it.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Simon. I mean, we've barely scratched the surface of the Chinese market, but
Yeah.
I hope I provided, you know, a knowledge base just to know what you're getting into, and that there is still a lot of opportunity here. And I'm going to leave my email at the bottom of the slides. So for anyone who has the slides, please feel free to ask me any questions, or if you need help breaking into the market, I'm all ears.
Thank you so much.